Hello and welcome back to another episode of the EP Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan McCarthy, and I'm joined with me by a very special guest today, Mitchell Vautin, the Director at Exercise Healthcare Australia. How you going, Mitch?
Very good, mate. Happy to be here.
Awesome, mate. Very, very excited to have you on board. I'll tell you first of all where I first found out from you guys. Probably about two years ago. I think it was probably Instagram, and I saw it pop up on Instagram. I think it maybe suggested people you should follow. I was like, Exercise Healthcare
Yeah,
Australia. It sounded like this, yeah, absolutely amazing EP clean. I checked it out. It looked bloody smick, absolutely amazing. And yeah, followed you from there and have been following your amazing work on social media. So it's yeah, all looks amazing, mate. But why don't you start off by giving us a bit of rundown of yeah, what you're doing at the moment, and then we can go into sort of where it all began.
nice, mate. I guess what I'm doing particularly, or what Exercise Healthcare Australia is doing, or
Yeah,
yeah,
tell us about Exercise Healthcare Australia. Tell us where you're at the moment with it.
yeah. So we've been very lucky. I think on the back of maybe a bit of our social media, we got a bit of interest from the industry, and then people are starting to recognise. I'm sure you feel as well. Exercise physiology is a bit more of a discipline. I think 2 years ago we were still a long way away from being someone that people looked for, and I feel there's a bit of a groundswell, and it's starting to move a little bit better, and people are starting to search for exercise physiologists, like maybe on the Google search or something. So yeah, at the moment we've just onboarded four exercise physiologists in the last 2 months. We're now got a team, I think, of 22 exercise physiologists, four admin staff, and then myself and Alison, my mum, at the helm. And our big focus at the moment is trying to help more people who've never exercised before or haven't exercised in a long time because they thought they were too sick, injured, or disabled to do so. And making it a bit more normal and sort of breaking down some barriers for those people.
Wow, that's very impressive, mate. Very inspirational. Such rapid growth. That would have to be one of the fastest growing EP businesses in Australia for sure, if not the fastest. So well done, mate. I think that's a credit to yourself there. Can you tell us about how it all began? Tell us, yeah, when and where it got started.
Just for EHA or for myself, or how far
Uh,
back do you want to go?
we'll start with EHA because I'm mindful of time. We could go
No,
for
of
hours,
course.
but mindful of time. We'll start with EHA right
Yeah,
there and move forward from there.
yeah. So in I saw the first patient set up at a little gym in North Lakes in the back half of 2017. I was still working full time at a government organisation, the Institute of Urban Indigenous Health, and I was doing sort of 1 day a week, just trying to get a feel for private practice. It was myself and Ben, who he set up on the south of Brisbane. I was in the north of Brisbane, and then in I think probably October, November, I went part time because I got pretty busy. Ben stayed full time, and then March of 2018, quit my other job, and then launched into EHA. So we were working out of a commercial gym at North Lakes, commercial gym at Algester, just north and south of Brisbane. And then before we both decided we're going to move into private practice and have an unstable income, we'd both already booked a trip to Europe. So I had a month, then there was a month in between, and Ben had a month. And so by sheer means of necessity, we got our first employee maybe sooner than we needed to. And we got her on board, and thankfully she was someone who was a student for me when I was working full time. She was awesome. Then we got her on board. I had a holiday, came back, got really busy. And Ben had his holiday. He came back, got really busy. And then soon after that, we needed another one. And I guess that sort of perpetuated over time from, three exercise physiologists in 2018 to now 2023 with 22 exercise physiologists and myself.
That's exceptional, mate. And what factors or actions can you contribute to that rapid growth? Would it be relationships? Would it be social media? Would it be word of mouth in your local community? Combination of them all?
Yeah, I think everything is a sum of all the small parts. But I think if I think about the big things, one is definitely I think, a care factor and a motivation that is sort of, again, it is very biased. It's my own sort of subjective assessment of the situation, but I did feel that exercise physiology was largely misrepresented when I went into private practice. In that there was, 20-minute initial assessments, people doing the bare minimum, no structured assessment process, no periodized programming, all things that the private field, strength conditioning, personal trainers were doing and had to do very well because there was a transaction of money. And I think because exercise physiologists, all that people were doing at that point was Medicare and DVA and whatever, and there was no transaction of money. So again, this is my assessment, but I think both the exercise physiologists delivering the service and the patients didn't perceive the value. And you can't perceive value for something where there's no transaction of funds. So my goal was to, I just loved strength conditioning for my own personal benefit, and I did a lot of just, research into the field, and I tried to apply strength conditioning and personal training sort of attitudes and values to people with diabetes, chronic disease, disabilities, and give them the same quality of service and the same value without that, I guess, perceived transaction. And also I wanted, those people to value it enough so they were transactional. And so my goal was always to show them that it's really valuable and get them paying privately the same way someone would if they were seeing a personal trainer, a strength conditioning coach, or an exercise scientist. So that's the big one. And then relationships obviously is a massive one with at that initial stages of GPs and chronic disease nurses. Benny was very good at that on the south side, and we had a relationship with pretty much every chronic disease nurse within 5-10 kilometers, knew their coffee order, what they liked, and would just drop in as often as possible and just be a pest, really.
Doesn't sound like a pest if you're adding that value, but
exactly right.
Sounds it makes perfect sense there. And I guess for young EPs in the industry, would you recommend them doing extra training in this S&C field? I guess it's been a while since I've been at uni, but I know we do touch on periodization, and there's some subjects within there. But did you think that helped create that extra value within your sessions, adding that more strength and conditioning aspect to it?
Maybe. I think everyone, if you're going to prescribe exercise, you should be doing exercise regularly. And if you want to get the most out of an exercise program, I always like to think about the extreme. So what is the extreme of exercise prescription? It's maybe Olympic athletes where they plan 4 years in advance and they build to one competition. So if you are somewhere on that spectrum, you should be planning your training ahead. You should be changing your sets, reps, volumes, intensities week to week, not just going, okay, I'm going to do 3 sets of 10 for 8 weeks, because that doesn't make any sense. And I think a lot of people just do that. They give them 5 to 8 exercises, 3 sets of 10 of every exercise. I'm generalizing here. I know a lot of people don't do this, but and if you have that sort of experience with doing that yourself, I think it'd be beneficial. Get your own coach. I've seen, I think, like 5 or 6 exercise physiologists in the last 2 years. I've seen plenty of S&C coaches. I personally invested my own funds to learn from them. I think that was very beneficial. I haven't done an ASPA level 1 or anything like that. My placement was at the Queensland Reds for 6 months, and that was good, but it wasn't great. So, more experience you get is good, but I think having some, getting a feel and understanding for what services exercise-wise people are paying for and paying good money for, that's the sort of service we need to be bringing into exercise physiology, and we need to be doing it better, and we need to be doing it in a way that people with chronic disease, disabilities, and people who've never exercised before can do and see the value in.
Yes, I 100% agree. And I don't see why we can't implement phases of hypertrophy or power training or strength training, muscular endurance into their programs. But you're exactly right. I do agree. I do think 3 lots of 10 is the norm for a lot of EPs, unfortunately. So I do think it doesn't matter the chronic disease, doesn't matter the age. We can implement these different phases in to achieve the goals that they want and communicate that well to them as well. So I think that's super important on that front. So can you just go down a little bit deeper in terms of that, what that actually looks like for you when you're periodizing a patient's program? How often are you reassessing? How are you keeping them engaged? How are you periodizing their programs specifically, I guess?
Yeah. So we have sort of I have a big a rule that is there's no rules in EHA. So we have frameworks, but everything is adaptable to the person that's sitting in front of you. One of our core values is walk in their shoes. So we recommend that everyone completes an initial 6-week block. And that if they can't do that, then that's fine. We give them the best possible alternative, but we let them know, look, exercise can't be something you do once or twice, or your 5 Medicare sessions. That's not going to get you outcomes. So if you want to achieve goals with exercise, this is what we recommend. And this is what now we're very lucky. We've helped, I think it's like 8,000 people over the last 8 years. So we know it works. So we recommend a 6-week block, and the block is periodized. So the first week's like, your typical accumulation week. So introduction week where it's 2 sets of everything, very low volumes, just learn how to move and spend some time building some rapport with that person. The next week, we just add a set. We go to 3 sets of everything. The next week, we add some reps. So now they've got a competency in the movements. This means we limit the amount of delayed onset of muscular soreness they get. And then at week 4, we increase the intensity. So drop the reps, increase the weight. Week 5, we do the same thing. Week 6, we hold the repetition. So we hold the weights and try and hit some PBs, which is a fun week for everyone. And then week 7, we start again. We reassess, take them through their new program and go through the block. And we explain that to everyone at the start. And that's been working really well for us. We've done that for the last 2 years, very structured, and then a lot done that before then. But again, we really formalized in the last 2 years. We have a bunch of sort of template 6-week to 12 to 52-week programs for different sort of levels of fitness that we sort of use as a framework. Again, no rules. If someone can't do that because they're FIFA or they just don't want to commit to that initially or whatever, we adjust it, but that's our goal.
Yeah, I think if someone's following that procedure, that first 6 or 7 weeks, by the time you get to that first testing, it's a no-brainer. There'll be a huge amount of improvement, and that's got to be a motivator. And I think that's one thing you didn't touch on before around the growth of the business. I feel maybe the main contributor is results. Like you're there, like people are paying for a service, they're paying to get an outcome. Yeah. So if you're obviously getting outcomes, you're getting busier from that. Like, yeah, the GPs are happy, the nurses are happy, the patients are happy telling their friends about it. Like you're getting outcomes. And I think that might be a big, this is a big contributor, having that structure in place there over those first 6 or 7 weeks, setting them up. Yeah.
And I think though, and one thing that I'm really aware of is that in the initial 6 weeks of someone who's not exercised in 20 years, you can give them 3 sets of 10 and they will improve because they went from no stimulus to any stimulus. So doing this takes much more effort, much more time, but it delivers a much better outcome. So it's like we're trying to get that extra 10% in the initial block. But when it gets to block 2, 3, 4, like in the next 6 weeks, that's when the 3 sets of 10 is not going to work anymore. But if you slowly periodize over time and you keep periodizing, that's when every little tiny detail matters. And that's why we've got heaps of patients now who've been with us for 4 or 5 years and keep coming back. Generally, because we've been able to keep going. And I know there's plenty of people who see the same EP and been doing 3 sets of 10 of the same exercises for the last 5 years, but I would be almost certain that none of those people are paying for those services.
Yes.
And they're on maybe the DVA or whatever. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but I think we could all do a better job. And if we all do a better job, everyone's going to recognize EP and we're all going to benefit from it. Yeah,
100% agree, mate. So what's a normal day look like for you at the moment in terms of, patient load or business tasks? Yeah. What's it look like here at the moment for you?
Yeah. So the week changes. Monday, half the day I do some business stuff. The other half of the day I'm with the team at Parkinson, where we do a PD. I catch up with a few of the EPs and I run a couple of sessions. Then Tuesdays is all business stuff. I do all of our sales calls and marketing and advertising stuff. So everyone who's a website inquiry at the moment, I call them all and have a chat with them. That's like a half-hour phone call with each person, which I think is really important. Again, for these people who've never exercised, they're scared of exercise, they're scared of gyms, etc. Wednesdays, I do a full day of patients. That's I really love that. It's 7 till 7. It's not for everyone, but I just get in and rip in and see people I enjoy seeing. Thursdays, half the days with the team at North Lakes. do some PD, touch base with a few of them, see how everything's going. The other half of the day I see patients, and then Friday is sometimes patients. I catch up with the orderly exercise physiologist, and whatever else happens in the Arvo, normally just some business related stuff.
Yeah, excellent. Sounds like a great structure. Is that is that something you're looking to maintain with the growth of the EHA, or are you looking to change any of those ratios out? I guess in terms of what is the plan for EHA? Is it continued growth and continue making a massive difference?
Yeah, the goal is get the good word of exercise out to as many people as possible. In terms of my caseload, I probably should do a little bit less, but honestly, I really love the craft, and I think a lot of the ideas over time, a lot come from the team now, which is really good. But I'm always looking for the extra 1%. And I find when I'm in there in the field practicing, that's when I get my best ideas.
Yeah.
So I think I'll always keep my Wednesdays. Maybe I'll reduce a little bit more, but I can only see I haven't done an initial in a long, maybe a couple months. And normally if I do a new assessment, I'll give them to another EP, unless I think it's fun, and then I'll take it on board if it's quite complex.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So for the listeners out there, a lot of them are students or in their first 3 years. What were some of the things you wish you knew in your new grad year, or I guess in the first 1 to 2 years out, wish you knew now, looking back on it. So a lot of those listeners are in that time right now. What do you wish you knew back then that you know now?
Well, probably the biggest thing is if you asked me 2 years ago, I'd give you a different answer, Ryan. But the most important learning for me is that whilst you have all the knowledge, you are not the expert. The expert is the person in front of you. And so the thing that you really need to get better at is having good conversations and asking the right questions, and asking questions that lead the conversation. So having at the back of your mind that walking in their shoes. So this person has a medical condition. This person probably doesn't want to exercise, or they've been told to exercise by their doctor, but they're not sure about it. They've heard from a friend that exercise is bad for the knees, and they've got sore knees, so why are they here? And then talking to them about their condition. So, what do you think would help? And trying to lead it down the path of like, maybe my knees aren't as strong as they used to be. What do you think would help that? Getting them a little bit stronger. Okay. Like just being able to really talk to someone and relate to someone, and direct it to a place of just facilitating them telling you that exercise would help, not you telling them. I used to have people come in and be like, I've got knee osteoarthritis. And I'd be like, okay, well, this is what's happening with your cartilage and your bone, and this is why exercise is going to be beneficial. And people don't like being told. They want to find out things for themselves. The thing that I read not too long ago that I think is the best thing ever is the best decision someone will make will be their own, and you need to try and facilitate them making that decision. So having good conversations is going to be more important than all those programming and periodizations and assessments, because that's ultimately going to thing that is going to get them back. But then if you're also really good at programming, periodization, assessments, then that's the best case ever. But getting them to come back is the first thing, and getting them to come back and be comfortable, and them to actually believe that it's going to help, because we all know the power of a placebo. So if someone's coming in going, this is actually what I need, then they're probably going to benefit. If they're coming in every session, they're like, I'm not sure. I think this is bad for my knees. I think this is bad for this. It's like, you're not going to win there. That's the mind's stronger than the body most of the time.
Yeah. Excellent. So to summarize that, what you're saying is, communication techniques, motivational interviewing, that cognitive behavioral therapy, and just understanding behavioral change and how to influence that. These are all things that are rarely touched on in uni, and we need to dive deep into that area to be influential, because that's what we're aiming to do. A lot of these people have never exercised before. We need to facilitate a behavior change in terms of their exercise and creating a habit for the rest of their life. So that's not easy. We need to double down in those areas. Was there any books or podcasts or mentors or anyone that helped you in this area and helped you grow as a communicator?
Honestly, one of the biggest influences in me getting a lot better at this, one was a lot of sales and marketing stuff. And I started getting better at communicating to people. But then it was actually Dan Ibel, one of our senior exercise physiologists, who he's actually been training our whole team and having these BPS conversations and some motivational interviewing. And it's sort of all this stuff I learned from sales and marketing 2 years ago. I was like, this is the exact same stuff. And then he put it into this clinical space, and it was like this light bulb. And I was like, oh my God. So yeah, he teaches our whole team, and he's just awesome. So and he's going to deliver that training to the rest of the EP world soon. So that's going to be something I encourage everyone to check out.
Excellent. Has he done a specific course or training in that area, or has he got any?
Yeah, so I think he had a few mentors and did some courses like with the knowledge exchange.
Yep.
But he's just honestly just always been good at a really good communicator.
Yeah.
And I think it's just sort of like built on that.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. I think so important that we understand that questioning. It's going to be everything in those first few years, and it's going to translate into all other areas of your life. Even if you're not an EP in 10, 20 years time, you're going to use it in other skill sets. But that's what it is. It is sales at the end of the day. With that initial assessment is more like a sales conversation. But if you say that to someone, it does sound a bit dirty, and like, oh, I don't want to sell them anything.
It shouldn't. Hey,
yeah,
it shouldn't. Like, we've got to lean into that.
Yeah,
because if we don't realize it's sales, then we're not going to help anyone. And so I think a lot of people avoid saying it's sales, but it's like, it is, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like if you really want to help someone, they're probably going to have to pay for it. And exercise physiology is not cheap, and nor should it be. But let's embrace that. Let's be honest. Let's be open, and let's really facilitate this. Because if they need it, which the people that we work with do, then that should be an easy sell.
Yeah. You're selling something that's evidence-based. It's not, not any black magic or anything, not snake oil or anything like that. So it's, makes it easy to sell. Awesome, mate. So good to chatting with someone so passionate about the EP industry. I guess, do you have a vision for where you see EP as a profession in the next 10 years time? So I guess where are we at? 2033. What does exercise physiology look like to you, mate?
Definitely. So to go back a little bit, at the end of last year, Benny left DHA to start a family and do some other beautiful things. I took over the helm, and I was like, I just need to work out what we're going to do. So I redid our vision and mission for Exercise Healthcare Australia. Our vision is that all of humanity believe that exercise and physical activity is a necessity for living a happy and healthy life. That'd be awesome. It's our infinite goal. We'll never achieve it, but that's what we're working towards. Our mission is by 2040 for people with chronic disease and disabilities to believe that exercise is a necessity and be the first choice for those people. And then Exercise Healthcare Australia be the leading provider. So I guess by 2033, and the 2019 stats, I think it was 2.3 million people who got a CDM referral. It was less than 10% got referred to an exercise physiologist. And if you look at the people who are eligible for a CDM referral, with my very biased exercise physiology lens, I think 100% of those should be seeing an exercise physiologist. But all of those referrals, majority went to podiatrists. And then the other, I think it was like 40% podiatry, and it was like 35% went to physiotherapy. And one portion of these chronic disease referrals are musculoskeletal conditions. The rest is diabetes, pulmonary disease, heart disease, and all these things that, again, I think exercise physiology should be seen. So by 2033, I would like to see exercise physiology getting the majority of CDM referrals, because that's something we can measure and look at. How we do that is by doing a really good job educating the population, and every exercise physiologist caring a little bit more. And I think if we all, stuff like people like Hunter, people like us, do that little bit better, then rising tide floats all boats. And the ones who aren't putting in the same effort that these people need, they'll sink. And that won't be the worst thing, because we all need to just step up a little bit. So 2033, people with chronic diseases look for exercise physiologists, in short.
Love it. I've got goosebumps, mate. I love it. It's exactly what I'm thinking. I think it's great goal that's measurable. If the majority of those CDM referrals go to an exercise physiologist, it's exactly what's needed. And I think another thing to touch on there, which I've been working on, and the listeners can work on this as well, is the practice nurses that write those referrals. I've actually had conversations with them to understand a little bit more about that process and how it goes down. And usually they'll say, the patient will guide that decision. We're a patient-focused business here. We're patient-focused. But if the patient doesn't know about EP, then you're doing them a disservice. And that's the issue. They go, oh, I want to go back to the podiatrist again. Yeah, they were good. I think they cut my toenails, and yeah, I needed that. And so I'm actually pushing just a little bit harder with the nurses, say, this is your responsibility to educate them on exercise physiology, and at least send one of those sessions to begin with to let them experience an initial assessment. And yeah, I know you are patient focused, but you have to educate at some point and provide some guidance, because it's going to be them who's going to be sending that referral. And yeah, I think that is important for all EPs that are having chat with the practice nurses.
Well, and we do the same thing, but we do our same motivational interviewing technique on the nurses. And we say, hey, why do you think they need someone else to cut their toenails? Oh, they can't get to their toenails. Like, oh, what is something they could do to maybe be able to reach the toenails? Like, oh, maybe if they were a bit more flexible. It's like, oh, do you know about how we help people? Oh, no, not really. And then you can explain how we can actually help them get a bit more hamstring range of motion, get a bit more flexibility, get a bit more comfortable leaning forward, maybe probably not us, but dietetics will reduce that central adiposity, stopping them from leaning forward, and mean that they can actually cut their own toenails. Would that be helpful? Oh, actually, it's like, what do you think? Why don't you just try us, give us one session, and I'll blow your socks off. And that often works. Because again, I think it's the best decisions of their own. So you've got to try and facilitate that. And then it comes back to that MI we were talking about, Brian.
Yeah.
But I really like that. I think that's a key thing. I was always like, just trying to, my initial thing when I met GPs, like, I'm just going to try and get the referrals that are going to know one, cardiometabolic stuff, assuming they're not going to physio. Then my next play was like, I'm going to try and get the musk stuff. And then a couple of years ago, I read that thing about podiatry getting like every single session. I was like, what the hell? I just need to tell people that cutting toenails is great. You need to do that, but you can probably do that yourself.
Yep. Absolutely love it, mate. I think, yeah, absolute, so much gold in there. Mindful of time, but we've got one last question, mate, that I say for all guests. And that last question is, in your eyes, your view, some of your experiences, your beliefs, your values, what makes the best exercise physiologist? I'll say in your area, so Brisbane. What makes the best exercise physiologist in Brisbane? What qualities do they have?
Yep. I think, but I'm going to go give you a few things. So one thing's passion. And that's by having a good why and understanding that exercise physiology is an amazing, amazing thing when done right. And if they truly believe that, they'll deliver that and everything, and that facilitates everything. Passion will then fuel you to care more, which is great. So care. And then I think you need to be clinically sound, but you don't need to be a professional. And then the most important thing is just be able to have good conversations and then believe in that outcome that you can achieve and understand that it's long term. So just be passionate. And if you don't feel like you're passionate, you don't really care, then go in and find, like, you should be researching the outcomes that you can get as an exercise physiologist. And then you shouldn't need to do much more. If you can see that significant changes you can get with a good exercise program for people who are very deconditioned, then you should be like, man, I need to do a good job here. And then that should fuel you to learn more, have better conversations, facilitate people's journey. So just care.
Awesome,
it's
mate.
Not a great answer, but
I think it's a great answer. Out of all the guests, no one has actually mentioned passion before, and it makes perfect sense. I said, if you've got that passion there, you probably want to do a bit more research around your clinical skills. You probably want to hang back a little bit more and educate that patient. You probably want to go out, and it feels like part of your mission to go educate referrers.
Yeah.
Like, it all starts with passion, and that's obviously what makes the best. And if you don't have that, then you obviously won't be the best. And if you're really not passionate about it, then I think in life you need to find what you're passionate about, because then you don't work a day in your life. So it might be something else. It might not be exercise physiology.
And if you're an exercise physiologist and you're not passionate, then you need to find a new job, because we got the easiest job to be passionate about.
Yes, 100%, mate. Absolutely love it. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, mate. Where can listeners find you? What's the best platform or links to find you and EHA, learn more about it?
Yeah, we're on Instagram, Exercise Healthcare Australia. There's myself, Mitchell Vautin, AEP. Dan, I mentioned before, Dan Ibel, AEP. Give him a follow. He's awesome. And then D, the EP. But you'll see us all on the page. I'm on LinkedIn too. I don't go on too often, but I'm on there. Feel free to reach out. But that's probably the best two places.
Love it. Awesome, mate. I'll chuck that all in the show notes for everyone to follow. And once again, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for your time, mate.
Thanks, Ryan. Have a good one.